The colony ship Horizon's Promise drifted through the cold darkness of space like a wounded animal waiting to die. Its reactor had failed 3 days ago, and now 12,000 humans floated in the black void with nothing but emergency power keeping them alive. The air was getting thin. The water recyclers were failing. Children huddled against their parents in the dim red emergency lights, and everyone knew the truth that no one wanted to say out loud. They were going to die here, in the empty space between stars, and no one would ever find their bodies. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge and stared at the failing screens. She had sent distress signals for 72 hours straight. No one had answered. This region of space belonged to the Eth Dominion, and everyone in the galaxy knew what the Eth were like. They were cold. They were practical. They followed their laws with perfect precision, and their laws said nothing about saving dying aliens. The Eth looked at the universe like a machine, and machines did not waste resources on parts that served no purpose. Maria closed her eyes and thought about her daughter sleeping in the lower decks. She thought about all the children on this ship, all the families who had sold everything they owned to start a new life on a distant world. They had been so full of hope when they left Earth. Now that hope was dying with the lights. The sensor officer suddenly sat up straight. His voice cracked when he spoke. There was a ship approaching, a Eth patrol vessel. Maria felt her heart sink. The Eth would scan them, confirm they had nothing valuable, and leave them to die. That was what the Eth did. That was what everyone said they did. The alien ship was called the Silent Duty, and it was beautiful in a cold and sharp way. Its hull was silver and black, covered in angular plates that made it look like a blade cutting through the stars. It stopped 500 meters from the Horizon's Promise and hung there in silence for a long time. Then a message came through, a voice speaking in perfect but accented human language. Human vessel, this is Captain of the Eth Dominion patrol ship Silent Duty. I have scanned your ship. Your reactor core has suffered catastrophic failure. You have approximately 40 hours of life support remaining. Do you require assistance? Maria stared at the communication screen. She did not know what to say. No one had ever heard of the Eth offering help to anyone. She opened her mouth and closed it again. Finally, she found her voice. Yes, we need help, please. We have 12,000 people on board, families, children. We have nothing to offer you, but please, if there is anything you can do. There was a long pause. Maria could hear her own heartbeat in the silence. Prepare to receive boarding parties. My engineers will assess your reactor. My medical staff will treat your sick. This will take time. Do not be afraid. The Eth came aboard the Horizon's Promise, and Maria saw them for the first time. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that seemed to hold no emotion. They moved with perfect efficiency, never wasting a single motion. They did not smile. They did not make small talk. They simply worked. Captain was different from what Maria had expected. She was shorter than the other Eth, with silver patterns on her face that marked her rank. Her eyes were just as dark as the others, but there was something in them that Maria could not name, something almost warm. The repairs took 3 weeks. Engineers worked around the clock, using parts from their own ship to fix the human reactor, gave orders to distribute food and medicine from the Silent Duty's emergency supplies. She did not ask for payment. She did not ask for favors. She simply gave, even when her own crew began to whisper that she was going too far. Maria met with every day to discuss the repairs. On the 15th day, she finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind. Why are you doing this? Your people don't help outsiders. Your laws don't require it. We have nothing to give you. Why? Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than Maria had ever heard it. When I was young, my mother told me a story. She said that the universe is cold and dark and empty, and the only warmth in it comes from the choices we make. She said that we can choose to be cold like the void, or we can choose to be the light that pushes back against it. Looked at Maria with those deep, dark eyes. Your people were going to die. 12,000 lives, including children who have done nothing wrong, who have hurt no one. My laws do not require me to help you, but my conscience does. You would have died. That should be reason enough to save you." Maria felt tears running down her face. She did not try to hide them. On the 21st day, the Horizon's Promise was ready to fly again, guided them to a safe shipping lane, and gave them coordinates to a neutral station where they could resupply. Before she left, Maria asked her one more question. "What will happen to you when your superiors find out what you did?" His face did not change. "I will face consequences, but I have made my choice and I do not regret it. Your people will live. Your children will grow up and have children of their own. That is worth more than my career." Maria reached out and took his hand. The Eth flinched at the contact but did not pull away. "We will remember you," Maria said. "I promise you that. Every single person on this ship will know your name. We will tell our children and they will tell their children. Humans do not forget kindness. Ever." Looked at their joined hands. For just a moment, something flickered in her dark eyes, something that might have been hope. "Then perhaps the warmth will spread," she said quietly. "Perhaps that is enough." The silent duty pulled away and vanished into the stars. Maria watched it go and made a silent promise to herself. She would keep her word. She would make sure that every human who lived because of kindness would remember her name. 200 years passed. Humanity grew from a struggling young species into something greater. They built fleets and colonies and monuments. They became a power in the galaxy. And in every human school, children learned the name of the Eth captain who had saved 12,000 lives when she had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Her face hung in memorial halls. A dreadnought was named after her. Her story was told and retold until it became part of what it meant to be human. Humans never forgot. But on the other side of the galaxy, the Eth dominion began to crumble. And its descendants had no idea that their ancestor had planted a seed that would one day save their entire species. The Eth dominion burned for 11 years before it finally died. Civil war had torn the empire apart from the inside, and when the fighting stopped, there was almost nothing left. The great cities were ruins. The proud fleets were scattered wreckage floating in the void. And the survivors, the ones who had somehow lived through the fire and blood, found themselves alone in a galaxy that did not want them. Ara was 23 years old when she became the leader of her people. She had not wanted the job. She had been an engineer, a builder of machines, a woman who found peace in the logic of circuits and reactors. But the old leaders were dead, and someone had to guide the survivors, and somehow that someone had become her. She stood on the bridge of the Endless Path, a cargo ship that had been converted into a refugee transport. Around her, 46 other ships drifted in formation. Some were passenger vessels, some were freighters. A few were old military ships with weapons that no longer worked. Together, they carried the last 80,000 free Eth in the galaxy. 80,000. That was all that remained of a species that had once ruled 100 worlds. The rest were dead or enslaved. The Or hegemony had seen the dominions collapse as an opportunity. They had swept in like predators smelling blood, claiming that the Eth were genetically inferior, that they were a mistake of evolution that needed to be corrected. They had burned worlds and rounded up survivors and sent them to labor camps where they worked until they died. Ara had escaped with her convoy 2 years ago. Since then, they had been running, always running. Every station turned them away. Every government refused them entry. The hegemony had made it clear that anyone who helped the Eth would face consequences, and no one wanted to anger the hegemony. Her second-in-command, an old soldier named Al, stepped up beside her. His face was lined with exhaustion and something worse than exhaustion. It was the look of a man who had stopped hopping. "We are out of options," he said quietly. "Fuel reserves will last another 6 days, food for perhaps 8. The medical ship reports that the disease is spreading. Without proper supplies, we will lose hundreds in the next week. Ara closed her eyes. She had heard this report before. Every day the numbers got worse. Every day more of her people slipped away into the darkness. Have any governments responded to our asylum requests? The collective says their borders are closed. The Federation claims they cannot risk war with the hegemony. The merchant guilds offered to buy some of our ships for scrap but will not take our people. Al paused. There is no one left to ask. We have contacted every major power in this sector. Ara opened her eyes and looked at the star map. So many lights, so many worlds, and not a single one would open its doors to them. What about the humans? Al made a sound that might have been a laugh in better times. The humans, they are too far away. Even if we could reach their space, we would run out of fuel long before we arrived. And why would they help us? They have no reason to care about ETH refugees. Ara nodded slowly. He was right. The humans were a regional power on the other side of the sector, almost 2 months of travel away. She had heard stories about them. They were an emotional species, prone to strange attachments and irrational behaviors. They were also completely unknown to the ETH. There was no diplomatic relationship, no trade agreements, no reason at all for them to risk anything for a convoy of dying refugees. But there was no one else. Send the message anyway, she said. Broadcast it on all frequencies. Tell them who we are. Tell them what has happened to us. Tell them we are dying and we have nowhere else to go. Al looked at her with something like pity in his eyes. Captain, it will not work. No one is coming to save us. Then we will die having tried everything. Ara turned away from him. Send the message. The message went out into the void. It was simple and desperate. It told the story of the ETH, their fall, their suffering, their flight. It begged for help from anyone who could hear it. And then there was nothing to do but wait. Days passed. The fuel ran lower. The food ran out. People began to starve. The disease spread from ship to ship, and the medical officers ran out of medicine and could only watch their patients die. Children cried for food that did not exist. Old people slipped away quietly in their sleep. Ara stopped sleeping. She walked through the ships, talking to her people, holding their hands, telling them that help was coming even though she did not believe it herself. She learned their names. She memorized their faces. She promised herself that she would remember every single one of them, even if she was the last ETH left alive. On the 10th day, when hope had become a distant memory, the sensors detected something. A ship. No, not a ship, ships. Many ships. More ships than Ara had ever seen in one place. Al's voice was shaking when he spoke. Captain, I am detecting a fleet on approach. Long-range scans show. I do not understand these readings. There are hundreds of vessels. Some of them are larger than anything in our records. Ara felt her heart stop. Identification. Human, they are human ships. The convoy erupted in panic. After everything they had survived, after all the running and the starving and the dying, they were going to be destroyed by a human fleet. The humans had probably come to claim their ships for salvage, or to hand them over to the hegemony for a reward. That was how the galaxy worked. That was what they had learned. Ara watched the fleet approach on her. It was massive. The largest ships were kilometers long, covered in weapons that could reduce her entire convoy to atoms in seconds. There was no point in running. There was no point in fighting. All she could do was stand and wait for the end. The communication system crackled. A human voice filled the bridge, speaking in accented but clear ETH. ETH Convoy, this is Admiral James of the United Earthship. We received your distress call. We are here to help. Please do not be afraid. Ara stared at the communication screen. She did not understand. The name of the human ship. She did not recognize it. It sounded ETH, but she did not know any ETH by that name. Repeat, she said, her voice barely a whisper. What is the name of your vessel? The UES, named for a ETH captain who saved 12,000 human lives 200 years ago. There was warmth in the human's voice. something that sounded almost like joy. Captain Ara, your ancestor gave us everything when we had nothing. Today, humanity repays that debt. Welcome home. Ara's legs gave out beneath her. She fell to her knees on the bridge and she did not even try to stand. Around her, she could hear her crew weeping. She could hear the message spreading through the convoy, ship to ship, voice to voice. The humans had come. The humans remembered. Her ancestor, a Eth captain she had never even heard of. A kindness given 2 centuries ago to strangers who had nothing to offer in return. And now, when all hope was lost, that kindness had come back to save them all. Ara looked up at the massive human fleet that had crossed half the galaxy to answer their call. And for the first time in 2 years, she let herself cry. The shuttle that carried Ara to the human flagship was small and fast. Through its windows, she could see the UES growing larger and larger until it filled her entire view. The ship was enormous. Its hull was dark gray, covered in weapons and sensor arrays and things she could not even identify. It looked like something from a dream or perhaps a nightmare, and it was named after her ancestor. She still could not understand it. She had searched the convoy's databases and found nothing about anyone named. Her family records went back only 3 generations. Everything before that had been lost in the Civil War. Whatever her ancestor had done, it had been forgotten by her own people long ago. But the humans remembered. Admiral James met her in the shuttle bay. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes, and when he saw her step off the shuttle, he smiled like she was an old friend he had been waiting years to see. "Captain Ara," he said, and he bowed his head in a gesture of deep respect. "It is an honor to meet the descendant of Please come with me. There is something I want to show you." Ara followed him through the ship. Human crew members stopped what they were doing to look at her. Some of them bowed. Others pressed their hands to their hearts in a gesture she did not understand. A few of them had tears in their eyes. "Why are they looking at me like that?" she asked. Admiral glanced at her. "Because they know who you are. Every human child learns the story of she is one of our greatest heroes." "I do not understand. She was Eth, not human." "That does not matter to us." The Admiral stopped in front of a large door. "We do not measure heroism by species. We measure it by actions. And what your ancestor did for us was extraordinary." The door opened, and Ara stepped into a room that took her breath away. It was a memorial hall. The walls were covered in images and words. At the center of the room stood a statue of a Eth woman in a captain's uniform. Her face was calm and strong, and her eyes seemed to look directly at Ara. "This is her," the Admiral said quietly, "captain of the Eth Dominion patrol ship Silent Duty." Ara walked slowly toward the statue. Around it, she could see displays showing the story. The human colony ship with its failed reactor, the 3 weeks of repairs, the supplies given freely with nothing expected in return, the words that had spoken to Captain Maria Santos. "You would have died, that should be reason enough." Ara read the words and felt something breaking inside her chest. This was her ancestor. This woman who had risked everything to save strangers. This woman whose kindness had been forgotten by her own people, but preserved for 200 years by the people she had saved. "We named 17 ships after her," Admiral said. "This is the 5th. The original was built 80 years ago." He pointed to a wall covered in names. "These are the descendants of the people she saved. 12,000 survivors became millions of descendants. Every one of them knows her name. Every one of them carries her story in their hearts." Ara reached out and touched the base of the statue. The stone was cold under her fingers. "We forgot her," she whispered. "My own people forgot her. How can you remember when we did not?" The Admiral moved to stand beside her. "Because humans do not forget kindness. It is part of who we are. When someone helps us, when someone saves us, we carry that debt forever. Not as a burden, but as a treasure. Your ancestor gave us hope when we had none. She showed us that even in the coldest parts of the galaxy there is warmth, We could never forget that. We would never want to. Ara turned to look at him. And now, what happens to my people now? Admiral smiled. Now we repay the debt. The United Earth government has already voted. Every Eth in your convoy will be granted full citizenship in human space. You will be given homes on one of our colony worlds. Your children will go to our schools. Your sick will be treated in our hospitals. You will never have to run again. But the hegemony, Ara said. They will not allow this. They have claimed the Eth as their property. If you take us in, they will see it as an act of war. Yes, the Admiral said simply, they will. And you are willing to risk that, for us. Admiral's smile faded. His eyes became hard. Captain Ara, let me tell you something about humanity. We remember kindness, yes, but we also remember cruelty. We have been watching the hegemony for years. We have seen what they did to your worlds. We have recorded every atrocity, every massacre, every crime against your people. We know the names of the officers who gave the orders. We know where they live and where they sleep and what they had for breakfast this morning. He turned to face her fully. Your ancestors saved us when we were weak. Now we are strong, and we will not stand by while the descendants of the woman who gave us everything are hunted and enslaved and killed. The hegemony thinks they can do whatever they want because no one will stop them. They are about to learn that they were wrong. Ara stared at him. You would go to war for us. We would burn the galaxy for you. The Admiral's voice was soft but absolutely certain. That is what it means to be human. We do not forget our friends, and we do not forgive those who hurt them. For a long moment, Ara could not speak. She thought about her people, starving and dying in their broken ships. She thought about the children who had been crying for food. She thought about the old ones who had given up hope. And she thought about her ancestor, a woman she had never known, who had made a choice 200 years ago that had changed everything. Thank you, she finally said. The words felt small and weak, but they were all she had. Thank you for remembering her. Thank you for coming for us. Admiral reached out and took her hand. His grip was warm and strong. Thank you for being her descendant, he said. Thank you for surviving long enough for us to find you. We have been waiting 200 years to repay this debt, and now, finally, we can. Outside the memorial hall, the human fleet surrounded the Eth convoy like a protective shield. Medical ships docked with the refugee vessels and began treating the sick. Food and water and medicine flowed from human stores to Eth hands. For the first time in 2 years, no one was hungry. No one was dying. And somewhere in the depths of space, the hegemony received word that humanity had taken in their escaped property. The High Council gathered to discuss this insult. They laughed at the idea that humans would defy them. They began to plan their response. They did not understand what they had awakened. They did not know that humans never forget. They did not know that the same species that had treasured a kindness for 200 years had also been watching their crimes with patient, silent fury. But they would learn. Soon they would learn. The hegemony was a monument to power. Its cities were built from the bones of conquered species. Its museums displayed the artifacts of civilizations that no longer existed. Its leaders walked through halls decorated with the trophies of 17 successful genocides, and they felt no shame. They felt only pride. High Sovereign Al sat on his throne and listened to his advisors argue about the human problem. They had been arguing for 3 days now, and he was growing bored. The humans had taken in the Eth refugees. This was an insult. This required a response. But what kind of response? We should demand the immediate return of all Eth, said Admiral Al, the commander of the hegemony fleet. The humans are a minor power. They will surrender rather than face our wrath. And if they do not, asked Minister Haz, who managed the hegemony's diplomatic relations. We know little about human military capabilities. Our intelligence is limited. What is there to know? Al laughed. They are a young species. They have barely been in space for 3 centuries. We have conquered 17 civilizations. The humans are nothing. Al raised his hand, and the room fell silent. "Send for the human ambassador. Let us hear what they have to say before we decide how to punish them." Ambassador arrived an hour later. She was a small woman with black hair and dark eyes, and she walked into the throne room like she owned it. The guards who escorted her looked nervous. She did not. "Ambassador," Al said from his throne, "your government has committed a grave offense against the hegemony. You have taken in refugees who are the legal property of our empire. This cannot be tolerated." Ambassador smiled. It was a small smile, but something about it made several of the advisors shift uncomfortably in their seats. "The are not property," she said. "They are people, and they are now under the protection of the United Earth government." "They are genetic inferiors," Al snapped. "They are a mistake of evolution. We are correcting that mistake." "You are committing genocide." Ambassador's voice was calm and cold. "You have destroyed their worlds. You have murdered their children. You have enslaved their survivors and worked them to death in labor camps. We have documented every single crime." Al leaned forward on his throne. "And what do you intend to do about it? Lecture us? Write a strongly worded letter to the Galactic Assembly?" "No." Ambassador reached into her coat and pulled out a small device. She pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. "I intend to give you a warning." The display showed a list of names. Thousands of names, scrolling past too fast to read. "These are the hegemony officers who ordered atrocities against the ambassador said. "We have their names. We have their locations. We have recordings of their orders and images of their crimes. This list has been growing for 10 years. She pressed another button and the display changed. Now it showed images, burning cities, mass graves, children being separated from their parents, bodies stacked like firewood. "We have been watching," Ambassador said. "Every time one of your officers gave an order to kill civilians, we recorded it. Every time one of your soldiers burned a village, we documented it. Every time one of your scientists experimented on prisoners, we noted the date and time and location." She turned off the display and looked directly at the High Sovereign. 200 years ago, a captain named saved 12,000 humans when we were weak and helpless. She gained nothing from it. She expected nothing in return. She simply chose to be kind when kindness was difficult and costly. Ambassador took a step toward the throne. The guards moved to stop her, but Al waved them back. He was curious now. "We named ships after her. We built statues of her. We taught our children her name. That is what humans do with kindness. We treasure it. We preserve it. We pass it down through generations like the most precious gift imaginable." Her voice dropped lower. "And that is also what we do with cruelty. We remember it. We document it. We preserve every detail with perfect precision. And when the time comes, we repay it in full." Minister has spoke up nervously. "Is that a threat, Ambassador?" "It is a statement of fact." Ambassador looked around the room at the assembled leaders. "You have one chance. Release all prisoners. Pay reparations to the survivors. Allow the war criminals on our list to face trial. Do these things and there will be peace." Admiral Al burst out laughing. "You dare threaten the hegemony? Your species barely has 100 warships. We have thousands. We have conquered 17 civilizations. You are nothing but clever monkeys who learn to build rockets." Ambassador smiled again. This time the smile reached her eyes, and it was not a friendly expression. "You believe we have 100 warships because that is what we allowed you to see. You believe we are a minor power because that is what we wanted you to believe. For 2 centuries, humanity has been watching and waiting and building. We knew this day would come. We knew that eventually we would need to repay debts that could not be paid with words alone." She turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she paused and looked back. "You have 30 days to accept our terms. After that, we will come for the people on our list, every single one of them, and we will not stop until the debt is paid. You would start a war over extinct refugees, Al called after her. Not extinct, Ambassador said. Not anymore. And yes, we would burn the galaxy for them. That is what it means to be human. We remember everything. The kindness and the cruelty, the debts of love and the debts of blood. She stepped through the door and was gone. For a moment, the throne room was silent. Then Admiral Al began to laugh again, and soon the other advisors joined him. Humans, Al said, shaking his head. Emotional creatures, all talk and no power. They will run the moment our fleet appears. Al nodded slowly. Prepare the invasion force. We will take back our property and teach these humans what happens when insects challenge the hegemony. None of them noticed that Minister had gone pale. None of them saw him quietly leave the room to gather his family and book passage on a ship heading far away from hegemony space. Because Has had studied humans, he had read their history, he had learned about their wars, their long memories, their patient planning, and he had seen something in Ambassador's eyes that terrified him. She had not been bluffing, she had not been afraid, she had been looking forward to what was coming. And whatever that was, Has wanted to be very far away when it arrived. The hegemony attacked first. They sent 3 fleets to strike at human border worlds, expecting easy victories. Admiral Al commanded the Central Fleet himself, eager to add humanity to the list of species the hegemony had crushed. The battle lasted less than 6 hours. All 3 fleets were destroyed. Al died screaming as his flagship broke apart around him. His final transmission was a confused plea for reinforcements that would never arrive. He had expected human ships to be primitive and slow. Instead, he found weapons that moved faster than his sensors could track and shields that absorbed everything his fleet could throw at them. He had expected humans to fight like the other species the hegemony had conquered. Instead, they fought like something out of a nightmare. The survivors of the battle sent messages back to These messages were filled with terror. The humans had not just defeated the hegemony fleets. They had taken them apart with surgical precision, destroying weapons and engines while leaving life support intact. They wanted prisoners. They wanted witnesses. High Sovereign Al received these messages in his throne room and felt something he had never experienced before: fear. How many ships do they have? He demanded. His new military advisor, a trembling officer who had been promoted only because everyone above him was dead, pulled up the latest intelligence. We do not know, High Sovereign. Our estimates were wrong. We believe they had approximately 100 warships. Current projections suggest they have over 2,000. That is impossible. Where did they hide them? Everywhere. The officer's voice cracked. They built shipyards in asteroid fields. They constructed factories inside moons. They have been preparing for this war for decades, perhaps longer. The human fleet appeared in hegemony space 3 days later. It was the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. Thousands of ships, ranging from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything the hegemony had ever built. They did not attack immediately. They simply waited, surrounding the like a fist about to close. A final message came from the human flagship. It was not from Ambassador this time. It was from a Eth woman with silver patterns on her face. I am Captain Ara of the United Earth ship Endless Promise, she said. Her voice was calm and strong. I speak for the 80,000 Eth survivors and the millions who did not survive. I speak for the children who were taken from their parents. I speak for the elders who died in your labor camps. I speak for every life you destroyed in your quest for racial purity. She held up a data tablet. This is the list. Every officer who ordered atrocities, every soldier who committed war crimes, every scientist who experimented on prisoners, every politician who enabled genocide. 12,000 names. We have evidence on all of them. Al watched the broadcast with growing horror. This was not how wars were supposed to work. Enemies were supposed to burn worlds and enslave populations. That was what the hegemony had always done. That was what they expected others to do. But the humans were not doing that. They were not attacking civilian targets. They were not bombing cities. They were hunting specific people with terrifying precision. Reports flooded in from across hegemony space. Human special forces were appearing on worlds throughout the Empire, moving through cities and military bases like ghosts. They were taking people, only certain people, the ones on the list. General Oss, who had ordered the bombardment of 3 ETH colony worlds, was taken from his private estate. Admiral N, who had commanded the fleet that destroyed the ETH, was captured at his daughter's wedding. Dr. Han, who had run the biological research programs, was found hiding in a bunker beneath his laboratory. The humans had known exactly where to look. One by one, the names on the list disappeared. Some surrendered peacefully, others fought and were subdued. None escaped. Human intelligence was too good. Human soldiers were too skilled. Human determination was absolute. The trials began 3 months later. They were broadcast across the entire galaxy, translated into 100 languages. The evidence was presented clearly and thoroughly. Recordings of orders, images of mass graves, testimony from survivors. The humans had documented everything, just as Ambassador had promised. The hegemony collapsed not from military defeat alone. It collapsed because the galaxy watched and saw the truth. Other species who had been considering alliance with the hegemony changed their minds. Trading partners, allies became enemies. The empire that had conquered 17 civilizations found itself alone and despised. High Sovereign Al was the last name on the list. He was found hiding in a secret bunker beneath his palace, surrounded by guards who surrendered the moment they saw the human soldiers. He was brought to trial and forced to watch recordings of every atrocity his empire had committed. When the verdict was announced, he did not speak. There was nothing left to say. 1 year after the war began, Ara stood on the surface of a new world. It was a beautiful planet, green and blue and full of life. The humans had given it to the Eth as their new home. They had called it New Eth, but the survivors had chosen a different name. They called it Swirl. A statue stood in the central plaza of the first city. It showed 2 figures side by side. One was Captain in her ETH uniform. The other was Captain Maria Santos in her human jumpsuit. Between them was an inscription in both languages. She saw strangers and chose compassion. Humanity never forgot. Admiral, now retired, stood beside Ara and watched as ETH children ran through the plaza, laughing and playing. Human children ran with them. The 2 species had become something more than allies. They had become family. Was it worth it? Ara asked quietly. The war, the lives lost, all of it. Was silent for a moment. 200 years ago, your ancestor risked everything to save people she had never met. She did not know what would come of it. She could not have imagined that her kindness would echo through centuries. But she made her choice anyway, because it was the right thing to do. He turned to look at her. We made our choice for the same reason, and yes, it was worth it. Every life we lost, every resource we spent, every enemy we made, worth it. Because this is what it means to be human. We do not forget our debts, we do not abandon our friends, and we do not let evil win just because fighting it is hard. Ara looked at the statue of her ancestor. She thought about all the Eth who had died and all the ones who had survived. She thought about the children who would grow up on this world, free and safe, never knowing the fear that she had known. Thank you, she said, for everything. Smiled, thank your ancestor. She started all of this. She planted a seed of kindness in the universe, and look what it grew into. Behind them, the sun set over the new city. Lights came on in windows. Families sat down to dinner. Life, against all odds, continued. And somewhere in the memorial halls of Earth, the story of was updated. A new chapter was added, telling the tale of how her kindness had saved her people 200 years later. Human children would learn this story. They would learn that even the smallest act of compassion can change the course of history. They would learn that humans never forget a kindness. And the galaxy would remember that humans never forget a cruelty either. The hegemony was gone. The Eth were saved. And in every corner of known space, species who had once dismissed humanity as weak and emotional began to look at them with new eyes. Because they understood now, humans were not weak. They were patient. They remembered everything, kept perfect records, and waited until they were strong enough to act on what they remembered. Be kind to them, and they would remember forever. They would build statues and name ships and teach their children your story for generations. Be cruel to them, and they would remember that too. They would watch and document and wait. And when the time came, they would make sure the debt was paid in full. That was the lesson the galaxy learned from the humans. That was the story of. And that was how humanity showed the universe what it meant to never, ever forget.